I'm today in part talking about toilet paper.
Good. It's a good.
Because toilet paper has a lot of similarity with the electronics industry. So wait and see what the outcome of this will be. Status of the European PCB industry. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My colleague, Dr. Mareike Haas, and me, we are here for a company which you might know under the brand in4ma, Information for Manufacturers. And Information for Manufacturers is a market research company which is focusing on generating data about the European EMS industry. And this is an industry with more than 2,200 companies in Europe. And I would like to present to you today this, let me see, where do I get, does this work? No, it does not as of now. Maybe yeah, and because I'd prefer to walk around rather than standing there. So in4ma stands for Information for Manufacturers, and we are generating qualified data, which means we do primary research. We go into the country company registers to get all the data. And the way we work, you can see over here, which is very much formalized. And if you later on hand me your business card, you will get a copy of the majority of those foils you see here today. This shows you the flow of data, how we generate it. First of all, we are working closely together with IPC in Europe. And IPC is supporting our work strongly because they think it's very valuable for the industry. And we do an annual survey together with the IPC where we collect the data in January of the previous year. And by the end of February, we have a full report which already represents about 35% of the EMS companies in Europe. And everybody who participates in the survey gets the survey report free of charge from us. And he can then use this report to benchmark his own results against the average of the industry. So there's huge advantages in doing that. And you see, I'm still not finished with the preparation of my work over here. You see, it's really getting excited. Yeah. What you might see as well on several important charts, there is a revision status. Our competition normally does not work with primary analysis. A lot of our competition, and the competition is normally people who sell their reports for 2,000 to 3,000 euros. And in my opinion, they are a waste of money because we are talking about non-official numbers and estimations in those reports. We are the only ones who generate primary data. 85% of all of our revenue data and headcount data actually come from the companies themselves, either via the annual survey or from the country registers. Yeah, like for example, over here in Sweden, we go into Prof SE to check your revenues. And as in Sweden, you are very disciplined. We normally have all your revenues from the previous year already mid of July. Yeah? So we know exactly what is going on over here. And our data changes because we learn new things. Even today, being over here at Evertiq, we learned that there is 2 more companies, EMS companies in Sweden, which we hadn't known before. It is smaller companies. One is Altus AB, which are exhibiting over here, and the other one is Comprot, which just was formed in 2020. We didn't know those two. So I had 10 minutes before I had to change my presentation to make sure they are in as well. Yeah. And then we have to change the revision status of the charts. Yeah. So you always know that it is changing. And a lot of big companies are referring to us, like for example over here, that is Flash, they are using our numbers. And we are living from donations. We have to rely on people not only buying our reports that would not give us enough money. We have to rely on donations, and we do that in a crowdfunding system. And this crowdfunding system today has more than 70 companies who pay us a very small amount of money every year to make sure that we continue our work. And they do that as they know exactly the value of our work. And due to that, we are proud to present them over here. And not only companies are supporting our work, it's as well associations who are supporting our work in Europe. And I mentioned IPC before, but then there is IG Exact in Switzerland, there is MELT in Hungary, there is Estonian Electronics Industries Association in Estonia, there is ACEM in Moldavia, there is Svensk Electronic in Stockholm, and I hope Elizabeth is here. Hi, Elizabeth. So then we have FHI in the Netherlands, and we have ZVEI in Germany. They all support our work because they know it's valuable information that we give here. So we lose sponsors as well. We lose them not because they are not happy with our work, but we constantly see mergers and acquisitions. Unfortunately, it is always companies who are both merging and both having been sponsors. So out of two sponsors, we go down to one sponsor. The last one was the acquisition of Orbit One by Hansa. Both companies were premium sponsors, and we lost a sponsor due to that. The same was before with GPV when they bought Enix. We lost a sponsor. Yeah? And there are many instances, so we can only ask you, come up to us. We have a stand over here in booth 119, and we can explain to you the advantages of becoming a sponsor and what you get out of it. We are a very small team of 3 people. It is Dr. Mareike Haas, who is here today. Then it is Anastasia Ederer. She's actually employed by IPC Europe in Munich, but she is paid by IPC, but she fully works for us, and it's me. And I have been in the industry for the last 46 years. I have been for a long time been an entrepreneur myself, so I know this industry quite well. If we look at the global scale, nobody can tell you exactly what the EMS industry on a global level is. Yeah? It is all estimations. Yeah? There is about 16,000 EMS companies, but the top 100, they generate 84% of the profits, of the revenues of the industry. So there is a lot of big companies, but there's much more small companies. We're gonna see that in a minute in Europe as well. In Europe, we have a lot of companies who are expanding into Europe, into the global field. There is a total of 117 companies who are operating outside Europe, and you see them over here. But this is a chart I can tell you immediately. This chart will never be correct. So don't take us for it. The reason is, once in a while, we only find out today, tomorrow. As I said, 10 minutes ago, in Sweden, there was the number 73 standing. Only by attending Evertiq Expo over here, we found two small EMS companies which we hadn't known, and we immediately added that. And I'm sorry I didn't change the revision status as of now. So if you look at the structure, and this is an old chart, it gives the structure of the with the 2022 revenues. If you look at that, then there is only 4 companies in Europe making, and I'm talking about European companies, making, no correction, I mean all companies, global companies as well. This has been in 22 only 4 companies in Europe who made more than $1 billion. So that was Foxconn, that was Flex, that was Jabil, and that was Solna. Those 4 were the 4 in the biggest group. And then you can see, whereas you go to the right, there is more than 1,300 companies who generate less than 10 million in revenues. So there is still a lot. And I'm trying to get this data collected now for 23 as well. I'm still not finished in it. And I show this in a comparison. And you see, we have one addition of a company with more than 1 billion. That's easy. That was after GPV took over Enix. They ran up in their revenues to more than 1 billion. So that is the situation. This chart will only be finished end of November. If you look at the total electronics market, we are talking about 154 billion euros in electronics manufacturing in Europe. And today, only 44% of that electronics production is manufactured by EMS companies, which means 56% is still manufactured by OEMs. And that is a positive message to you, that there is still a huge marketing potential for you to convince OEMs to transfer their production to you and have the OEMs have less capital binding and focus their business on sales and R&D for new products. Yeah? So a company doing that can develop themselves much faster if they don't have to look after the production themselves. If they transfer that business to an EMS, they're much better off. Yeah? And but they have to be very careful when choosing the right EMS. It's nothing like buying a commodity product. When you choose an EMS, you need to make sure that you have the right partner who fits to you. And that process takes up to 2 years before you finally decide. Yeah? And I have this discussion very often, that people come up to me investing in the EMS industry, and they tell me, well, I don't understand why this company is not having new customers every 3 months. It's not possible. Yeah? The OEM, he selects the EMS very carefully, because it's going to be the manufacturer of his products. And he needs to make sure that the quality of those products are good, otherwise he's going to fail in the market. So that's a very, very important issue. And what you see over here is that it's still 44%, which means 56%. The negative message for you is, over here in Sweden, it's different. Over here in Sweden, it is about 55 to 60% of all electronics products are already manufactured by EMS. And the reason for that is very simple. When SMD technology came up 30 years ago, a lot of OEMs in Sweden decided not to invest themselves in new machinery for SMT, but instead transferred those products to EMS companies. And that is first-hand information I have from many EMS companies over here in Sweden who all confirmed that that is the situation over here. So the market potential in Sweden over here is a little bit different, but you should not limit yourself to Sweden, but you should look for all of Europe when you do your business. Now, I'm rushing through this because I'm already behind my time over here, and probably this list of the top 25 EMS companies will be published today at 4 o'clock on Evertiq. So you will have this list at 4 o'clock. What I did here is I show you how much revenue you had to make in order to be among the, let's say, the top 5 or the top 50. Yeah? And you see the development, how that changed, especially with the big ones. The big ones grew much faster. Yeah? Whereas it was possible to be among the top 5 with revenues of 580 million in 2018. Today, you need to have 1.4 billion in order to be among the top 5. So there is a consolidation, but as well a huge growth. And what the huge growth is causing, I will specify more in my presentation at the Evertiq Expo in Warsaw, in Poland, in about 4 weeks, because it's just not possible to tell and show you every individual detail. But what is an important part of it is the mergers and acquisitions that are going on. And this is just an example. We all know that Kitron took over BB Electronic. We know that GPV took over Enix. We realized that Kartek was bought by Kontron. Sycor has had a tremendous growth through acquisitions, and they have focused in specific on defense electronic manufacturers. Note has done a lot of acquisitions in specific in the UK. Inission is having the strategy to buy one company every year. Their view on expansion is that they take the profits of 1 year and they reinvest the profits into buying another company. The last acquisition was earlier this year, Axe in Norway. So they are building their business more and more, and they're going up the top 25 all the time. Hansa as well, they are with the acquisition of Orbit One, which was a very good move, and I've visited the factory in Ronneby last year. It's quite an impressive factory. And then we have in France Alliance Electronics, and they are over here at the exhibition today as well. Now, here is a different ranking. That ranking is the top 50 of the European EMS only. And you see as well the changes over the last 2 years. And you see Note on position 20, Hansa on 21. But Hansa, that is with the 23 revenues. If we collect the 24 revenues of Orbit One with it, they tremendously go up. So there is a lot of players, and Kitron on position number 6 over here. There is a lot of players from Scandinavia, and that as well on the top 26 to 50. Now, if we look at the development, we see one thing, and you see as well, 23, I don't have all the numbers as of now. That value might still change by 100, 200 million. But that is, in regards to a percentage, it's not that big. Yeah, I have about 90% real data already together, and the remaining will come until the end of the year. But what you see, and that is the important thing, is have a look at 21, 22, 23. We all know due to Corona, we had this dip in 2020 with minus 5.6%. And I do deviate between Eastern Germany and Eastern Europe and Western Germany. That is not a political statement. It is simply due to the fact that the structure of the EMS industry in the Western European country is different to the ones in the Eastern European country. In the Eastern European country, as you can see, they make roughly the same revenues as in the West, with a big difference. In Western Europe, this revenue is generated by about 1,800 companies, whereas in the East, the same revenue is generated by 420. Yeah? So you have a lot of big companies like Flex, like Jabil, Foxconn, yeah? They all do this. And if we look at now why there was a drop in 23 in Eastern Europe, I can explain you that as well. We have the three big players, Foxconn, Jabil, and Flex. And you can see that Foxconn in 2023 had revenue drops of nearly 2 billion. And that caused all of Eastern Europe to tank in 2023, whereas many other companies still had very reasonable results. And you can see it as well from Jabil and Flex. They still were able to increase their revenues. But now I'm going to come to two charts, which I'm going to focus on later again. I just want to show you them now. This is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And the next one is Scandinavia. The Scandinavian chart is all converted in euro with the relevant exchange rate. But what you see over here is Sweden had a nearly 22% growth rate in 22. And that is something which I would like to focus on in a little while. Before I do that, I would like to just show you the development of the Swedish EMS industry in Swedish krona. Here again, in Swedish krona, the growth was even nearly 27%. So this is unbelievable growth rates. Yeah. And if you look at the top 20 in Sweden, some of you are on there. Yeah, like for example, Norautron, who is here today, they have 2% of the market. The market was 15.138 billion Swedish krona, a plus of 13.6% against 22, and that equals about 2.3% of the European production value. The biggest one, Note, then Scanfil, then Hansa, GPV, Kitron, Inition. Orbit One still separate because the acquisition only happened in January this year. So next year, those 5.2% will add up to the 9.1, and it is very much likely that Hansa will be then closely behind Node. And if I watch the market correctly, Hansa and Node have always been chasing each other very, very closely. It's a very interesting challenge, and as long as it remains positive, it's good for the market and for the shareholders as well. If we now look at the public companies, you see, I'm normally tracking 9 companies. They all had a growth rate of 12% overall. There was only one company who had a negative growth. That was InCap, and we all know this. They had a big customer who deferred orders out of 2023 into 2024, and that's why they were not able to maintain their revenue prognosis, and mid of 23, they already had to give a revenue and a profit warning to their shareholders. And here, that's a typical chart which we normally have in the annual survey. It shows you the distribution of the companies that report their numbers. And what you see over here is in 22, there were 39 companies, or 13%, who were able to increase their revenues by more than 50%. And again, I want you to remember this, because I'm going to get back in a minute when I come to this one over here. In 23, again, still 80% of the companies were able to generate higher revenues. There were some 20% who had lower revenues. I have to say so. In those 20%, for example, there are two companies from Ukraine, EMS companies in Ukraine, who are reporting their numbers into the statistics as well. And for sure, they have had trouble to maintaining their revenues in the past, and that is included over here. But now, that's again from the annual statistic, and you see a lot of differences. But if you look at Scandinavia, 8.2%, Spain, Italy, Slovenia, 28.6% change in revenues. Poland, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, 22%. Belgium, France, 17%. Germany, nearly 15%. And what you see as well, we are always talking about a problem in labor, not sufficient labor. We've heard that for many years. But now look, in Germany alone, they hired more than 2,500 people for the EMS industry. Where did they take them? I can tell you. When they talk about short labor, it is a specific labor rate they want to pay. And for that labor rate, they don't get people. But if it really hurts them, they're willing to pay more, and then they get the people. Yeah. So we don't have a real labor problem. Yeah. We might just have to adjust our cost structure. Yeah. So overall, 5.9% more labor in the industry, more or nearly 5,000 people working more. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is only the companies which reported their numbers in the annual survey to us, which represent about 35% of the production value in Europe. So if you calculate that up to 100%, it comes to much higher numbers. The biggest problem, so, is inventory. And then again, I'm going to come to the inventory in a minute. What you see is in red the baseline for the years 2015 to 2019. On average, you had about 15% of inventories, raw material inventories in stores, 15% of the annual revenues. Yeah? And that jumped dramatically up. Yeah? And in actual fact, you had in 22, 6.4 billion of inventory in excess to the normal levels. And even so, you tried to reduce that inventory in 23. You still had 5.2% in inventory in excess. And I'm going to explain to you why that is the case in a minute as well. Now, as you see, now the development of the raw materials inventory of the 9 public companies, they were able to reduce that by 6.1%. Only one company dramatically built that up, that was Sycor, but again, that was due to the acquisitions for the air, space and defense industry. And at the moment, airspace and defense is more or less the only market that is growing. Yeah. You see as well, again from the annual report, the order backlog calculated in days. And we normally say the backlog is in a good position when it is between 120 to 240 days of order backlog. So that was the situation end of 23. If we look at, and we did this calculation for Germany, Austria and Switzerland in specific, you see how the order backlog went up in 21. Some people had orders on hand for the next 2 years, or even more. Yeah? But that has dramatically reduced again. And why was it possible to reduce that? Because we were able to deliver the products. And again, I'm going to get back to that in a minute. We do that calculation as well, depending on the different revenue groups. We do that in specific in Germany, because in Germany we get the highest amount of companies filling in the annual survey, normally more than 100 companies. So we can separate these companies into different revenue groups. Yeah, and what you see over here is that normally the smaller companies have a lower order backlog. Yeah, but on the other hand, they have a higher inventory. And now that finally brings me to talking about what my real subject is. I want to talk with you about the toilet paper crisis. Why do I want to talk with you about the toilet paper crisis? I want to talk with you about the toilet paper crisis because it has, and now I have to go to my script, yeah? I don't have everything in my head, yeah? Because it has a lot of similarities to what is called the chip crisis. The chip crisis, everybody fears, yeah, that there is going to be another chip crisis. But let's call back 2020. All of a sudden, toilet paper became short. And now, toilet paper is such a predictable product. Why is that the case? Toilet paper has a relative constant demand. And only if you have the wrong political party governing you, like in Germany, then people might need more toilet paper to clean up all the shit. But other than that, there is a constant demand. And that constant demand normally doesn't change. And toilet paper is not an exciting product. You don't go into a supermarket today and say, hey, I'm going to buy toilet paper today. Yeah? How exciting. The same is with the semiconductor. You don't go as a procurement manager out to the industry and say, hey, I'm going to buy chips, semiconductors today. No, you don't do that. Yeah? Normally, you base your purchasing procedures on the very fact that you have a normal way of doing it. It's a limited, rational thing which can change this. So, and that is what we call the supply chain. You have different companies working together. You have the manufacturer, so you have a distributor, you have the wholesaler, or in this case the EMS, and you have the end customer, which is the EMS. And they are all independent, but they rely on each other that there is a constant flow of product which allows the company to fulfill their requirements. And that supply chain was totally disrupted in 2020. And I thought it was only in Germany. No, it was in all of Europe. Yeah? So that is something which is very interesting. But there was no greater need for toilet paper in 2020. So what happened? A rumor spread, toilet paper is going to be short. And then you have other people hearing this and thinking, well, could it be that I missed some information? Could it be that other people know more than I do? And shouldn't I better now make sure that I level this information asymmetry by going out and buying toilet paper, just to make sure that I have sufficient toilet paper in-house? And that is the worst thing that leads to a problem. Yeah? And this problem is the disruption of a functioning supply chain. A supply chain, we call it a supply marriage. Yeah? You rely on your supplier, yeah? And you do that as long as it functions. Now, you have this situation as well that you have a distributor. He is storing your products. Storage is expensive, yeah? And you would like them to store as much as possible, so you have it. Whereas the distributor would like to reduce the storage as much as possible because it binds capital, it costs him money. And we had the same situation with the component industry, or better with the semiconductor industry, and especially the semiconductor is the most expensive part in the PCBA components. Yeah? And people would love to have as less storage of this as possible, as well as the distributors. But on the other hand, they have to satisfy the demand of their customers, at least in the past they had to. And now comes something which I'm going to explain to you in a minute as well. A shortage happens, but what is a shortage? Let me tell you, for whatever reason, a shortage happens, and you hear there is a shortage. And there is only 100 pieces available of a product. And what do people do? They think, well, if there is allocation of the 100 pieces, I only get a certain share. I will definitely not get what I actually wanted. So I better increase my orders. I double my order quantity, then I get a bigger share. That is what we call the bottleneck poker. Yeah? And the thing is, everybody does that. It's not just you who does it. Everybody does this. So all of a sudden, demand rises. Yeah? And you might say, hey, I might have gotten. In actual fact, the small EMS companies suffered the most because they were disadvantaged against the big companies and they were badly looking for product. But this artificial increase of orders is so bad because you cannot rely on the real demand of the market anymore. Yeah? It is false information that is created. And it is wrong to assume that by having a higher order, you get more. It's not the case. But here I want to jump now what the real problems were in 2021. Remember, in February of 2021, there were big winter storms in Texas. And Texas has several semiconductor manufacturers. Some of them are, for example, 2 factories of NXP. And NXP is manufacturing microcontrollers. And these microcontrollers are, in the majority, used in the automotive industry. And there was a disruption of the supply by more than 2 weeks due to the shutdown due to the winter storms. In addition, we had 1 month later, a big fire in Japan in the Renesas factory. Unfortunately, that factory manufactured nearly the same products as NXP. It was microcontrollers again. And it took them nearly 100 days to rebuild the production, because I think there was 5% of the production space was totally burned, and they had to rebuild all of that. And they were up again sometime in June. And then they announced, and I think they were able to meet that, to have the normal output again 3 weeks later. So mid of July, they were able to get this. And that was the only, listen carefully, that was the only shortage that happened. And now I jump again. I show you for the different markets in the electronics industry what the average growth rates are over the last 20 or 10 years. Yeah? What you look at is an average of 3.6%. And there is a very, very clear rule. The market never jumps. So don't think that from one day to the other, the market jumps up by 20, 25%. Because that doesn't happen. You as a consumer who is a final end user of the electronics will not all stand up and now start buying a different product. And even if Apple today would announce a new mobile phone which was having much more features, yeah, it would still be not everybody of you buying it. It would be a certain percentage. On the other hand, there would be other products who would be less in demand. So there is a constant increase, but it's not a jumping. And now I want to show you the different products, and that's why I have this over here for. Let's analyze the semiconductor industry a little bit more in detail. This is analog chips. Then we have RAMs, random access memories. We have read-only memories. We have analog chips. We have static RAMs. We have video RAMs. We have EEPROMs. We have digital signal processors. We have NAND flash, which, by the way, is reducing constantly in price nowadays by 1.5% every month. We have microprocessor units. Oh, this is a small wafer. Microcontrol units. This is a drum. This is NOR flash. This is logic chips. Oh, this is a new 300 millimeter wafer. It is used for drums with a 5 nanometer node. Yeah, so they're really big. You find them over here on the toilets as well. Yeah? So what I want to express with this is a semiconductor is not a semiconductor. So if there is a shortage, we're not talking about all semiconductors being short. We're talking about specific semiconductors being short. And that was microcontrollers for the automotive industry, which were short in 2021. And if we look at all the different markets, you see that over here. Yeah? The automotive industry has a certain percentage, and that is normally around 8–9% of the market is for the automotive industry. And on specific, I say down here, servers account for 8.5%, because I'm getting back to that at the end of my presentation. You see, we have three big market segments, the 3C, consumer, computer, communication. Those are the three market segments which occupy the most of electronics. And in the majority, those products are manufactured in the Far East. Yeah? We only do the special things in the Western world, in America and in Europe. And among the computer industry, servers is just like that. And servers are used for artificial intelligence, for example. Yeah? More I don't say at the moment. But now I get back to the semiconductor industry. and the chip shortage. This chart shows you that in 2021, in 2021, the semiconductor industry was able to increase the output, and I'm talking not about revenues, I'm talking about quantity, by 21.6%. A quantity that is much higher than what actually the market needs. So you have to ask yourself, why did we have a shortage then? And I get back to the automotive industry, because what you see over here is the number of cars being built. And it's always being said that the automotive industry collapsed due to the fact that there were no chips. And it's wrong. It's totally wrong. And you see that by the numbers. There was already a decline in 2019. And the problem was that the automotive industry, especially two players, Nissan and Volkswagen, always were fighting for #1 position on the global sales. And they were beating themselves up. And I remember 2018, Volkswagen manufactured that many cars that they had to store about 800 cars on the non-finished airport in Berlin, because they didn't know where to put them. So that was the situation. So in 2019, they already pulled the brake and manufactured less. And then came Corona, and that gave them the rest and gave them a real problem. Yeah? But other than that, there was nothing. Now, that brings me back to why all of a sudden was everything short. And again, I'm using the German numbers of the Federal Statistical Office, which showed that not only toilet paper became short, it was pureed tomatoes, it was flour, it was yeast, rice, pasta, sugar, canned fruit and vegetable. All of a sudden they all, and I think even sunflower oil became short as well. Yeah, so everything became short. And you can compare that again to the electronics industry. When the procurement managers tried to be smart and order more, it became a real problem for the distributors because they couldn't handle all the orders anymore. And that is something when they put out a new rule, which was no fixed order, no delivery date. So you could not do any logistical planning anymore, yeah, because you had to order the product in order to get the delivery dates. And then the problem was you had to make a decision. What if I have the semiconductor, but I don't have all the other parts for the PCBA? And the industry, what they did, they started to order the full bill of materials. They bought everything. And by doing that, they did exactly what the distributors had planned. The distributors had planned to shift their stores over to you, to the OEMs and to the EMS. And all of a sudden, you build up huge inventories. And if we look at this on a practical term over here, you see that in 2021, order intake in Germany increased by 116%. And all of that was artificial demand. There was no real demand. There was no real increase in products for the end consumers here. Yeah? Instead, it was just artificial. And you, in return, bought more and more material. And I don't have this for 22 at the moment. I picked the wrong chart. But I do have the 22 numbers as well, which further went up. You can see, interesting enough, what you see over here. Does any one of you remember 2018? We had an allocation problem in 2018 as well. That was MLCCs. But MLCCs, in regards to its value, only has a minor share compared to semiconductor. So the MLCC allocation only increased the inventory number slightly. Whereas in 21, the inventories on the semiconductor and all of the materials went up like hell. And if you now look at the inventory levels of the 9 public company, you see 106%. Where is 106? There it is. 106% increase in inventory levels in the EMS industry. And what did you do? You continue to order like hell. And you thought, I need to do that. And the distributors by then had successfully transferred their storage to their customers. And by doing so, they freed a lot of cash. And if you remember the Electronica 22, the distributors were having big booth parties. Yeah, they could party because they made big, big profits. Yeah, but that was very, very short-sighted. Yeah, and they knew that it was short-sighted. And they were afraid that you would go back to them and tell them, well, I have excessive material, you need to take that back. And that is when they implemented the NCNR rule. They put in the rule, no change, no returns. Yeah? Or you could as well say, keep the stuff, we don't want it anymore. Yeah? We just want you to pay the bills, nothing more, nothing less. This was stupid, really stupid, because the EMS industry is the customers of the EMS. Don't fool a customer. Try to be a partner for your customer. Yeah? Not somebody who tries to trick them and to disadvantage them. Yeah? In addition, what they have done is they opened up a totally new branch. And that branch was, whereas in the past you had manufacturers and distributors, now you had manufacturers, distributors, and you had on top brokers or similar people. Like, for example, I have this example of a company called Chip Connect. They offer an online platform where the EMS and the OEM industry can put on their excessive material and try to sell it to others. Yeah? So we now have 3 different sources of materials. And that is to the disadvantage of the distributors. And it's their own fault that this happened. And if we go back to the chips manufacturing themselves from 2020 to 2022, they increased quantity by 50%. 50%, ladies and gentlemen. So where's the chip crisis? Let me show you. We only had a chip crisis in Austria. If you look at the 2021 numbers, you see in Austria, the revenues only increased by 0.4%. And that was due to the fact that there was really no chips, no microcontrollers. In Austria, we have 3 big companies manufacturing for the automotive industry. That is Melex, that is CMS, and that is Becom. And the automotive share of all EMS manufacturing in Austria is about nearly 40%. So they couldn't lift up their revenues. But everybody else was able to lift up their revenues. And we did a survey. You all know that the prices for the components increased. But the price increase was only 1/3 of the revenue increase. So 2/3 was quantity increase. And if you look at that, 3 consecutive years in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, 9.2% in 21, 18% in 22, 9.1% in 23. That's probably not that interesting for you. You probably want to see the numbers for Scandinavia. But here they are. And again, have a look. 13.6% in 21. 17.8% in 22 and 7.7% in 23. Now, even if I deduct 1/3 for price increases, I still have 2/3 in quantity increases. Now, can anybody tell me where you took the chips from if there was a chip shortage? Where did you take those chips? Did you manufacture the boards without semiconductors? No, you did not. There was never a chip shortage. Yeah? It was just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because this self-fulfilling prophecy caused you to buy more than you actually needed, and you have all these materials on stores at the moment. And now you ask yourself in 24, where have all the orders gone? And we did a half-year service for the first half of 24. And what you see is 73% of all companies had lower revenues in the first half of 23. And only few companies had higher revenues. Yeah? So the whole industry is tanking. And if you ask me again, where have all the orders gone? I tell you, you manufactured those orders to your customers already in 22 and in the first half of 23. And they are now lying on the stores of your customers. And as your customers did not see a jump of the market for their customers, they still have their stores full. So they pulled, in the second half of 23, they pulled the brakes and said, no further deliveries anymore. We don't need anything. And many as well said, we don't need anything in 24 anymore. So that is why, on average, your revenues are tanking by 10 to 15%, and the smaller ones even 20 to 25%. That is the only reason. Don't tell me anything about interest rates or the general economy is slowing down. Bullshit. Yeah? It is not. Yeah? It is a self-made problem. And again, on the half-year survey, sorry, need to get back to that. Yeah. You see over here, on the half-year survey, billings were 12.4% down. Order backlog was nearly 20% down. And for the big companies, and this is the global companies, because it was not just a European problem, it's a global problem. You see minus 11.5% for the global companies. And for the European public companies, whereas in 23 it had been plus 12%, it all vanished again with minus 11.8% in the first half of 24. So you had a big advantage in 23, which vanished in 24. So when you ask me today, when will the orders return? Skip 24. Nothing's going to happen in 24 anymore. You will have to live with the fact that your revenues will be much lower. Only in the first half of next year, you will see a relief. At the same time, at least you are able to reduce your inventory. And you remember, I said end of 23, we were still having 5.2 billion more in excessive inventory. In 22, 6.39. It's now to 3.5 billion, but it's still too much, too high. The order backlog has reduced tremendously as well. You can see that 25% in things. And now I have to speed up a little bit because I'm getting late. I'm very sorry for this. But I have to admit, I'm known for always being late on my presentations. So what you see as well is the order levels have come down to just to a normal level. And that is a normal level which you normally experience all the time. The distributors are much worse because you are still living from your own inventory. So they have seen their revenues tanking by 30%. Yeah? And I just returned on Sunday from the United States and talked with the people over there. Again, minus 30% in the United States as well. And I have some charts per country. I'm going to skip those. But I want to clearly say the scarcity, the shortage was nothing else but a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I warn you, because there's people running around in this market at the moment, and they are spreading the message after the chip crisis is before the next chip crisis. And I can only advise you, if those people come to you, you just kick them out and give them that. And tell them they can keep their shit. Yeah? And if you need one of these, you can happily get them at our booth over here at Evertiq. Yeah? But what people are trying to do at the moment is they're trying to develop a new rumor that there is a shortage, and they are threatening you. They are threatening you by telling you if you don't order now, you will not get anything for the next 2 quarters. That is not partnership. That is people trying to think you are stupid. Yeah? And you have to watch out who is saying that to you. I just tell you that there is one distributor who has been sold recently. And he's one of the guys who is pushing very hard. And you have to know that this company might have in their sales contract an earn-out clause, which tells them that depending on the revenues for the next 24 months, they get an additional bonus. So their interest rates is not to help you get sufficient supply of semiconductors. Their issue is to make sure they get a bonus as high as possible. And that is definitely not what I call partnership. So if they come to you, kick them out, it's definitely not the case. And I can tell you, the only rumor that is right is at the moment that the component prices are going down further. Yeah? So you better talk with your distributors and tell them that you want to see a price reduction. But the point is as well, the full problem is not solved until you admit that you, your customers, and the distributors did something wrong. And you did something wrong by ordering much more than what's actually needed. And as long as you don't admit this, you will fall into the same trap again. And I can only advise you, for example, look for the right planning tools. Yeah? And this is, again, just an example of an exhibitor who is here as well, Luminovo. Yeah? They have the right planning tools for you to properly plan your production. And that is what is very important. And this brings me to my final recommendations. The OEMs have excessive inventories and stopped ordering new products. That is the fact. The question how long that will take is a matter of your individual customer base and what markets you're serving. As usual, the automotive industry is the most complicated one, and I normally advise all medium-sized EMS not to touch automotive at all. But what you need to do is you need to convince your customers today that they don't bring their storage level down to 0 before they start ordering again. You need to get them to start ordering again when they are at a normal level, and even taking into account that you need a certain time to manufacture the products. Yeah? So the latest in the 4th quarter, yeah, and maybe already in October, they should start ordering again for you to be able to deliver in January and see this uprise of your revenues again. And everything else I recommend to you. As I said before, if you have a distributor who tells you there's going to be a next shortage, kick him out, give him some nice tools to clean up the bullshit they are spreading, and then try to get a normal supply chain back, and that is possible. Thank you very much.